Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome after the break. We are going now to have Professor Timothym Gartonem Ashem, who is the professor at St. Antony's College, Oxford, and the senior representative of the Stanford University. In the period 2001-2006, he was the director of the Center for European Studies at St. Antony's College, where he currently runs the Dahrendorf Program for Freedom Research. The Free Speech Debate research project, which is available in 13 languages on the freespeechdebate.com platform, has contributed to writing the book Free Word: 10 Principles for a Connected World. Timothym Gartonem Ashem is the author of 10 books devoted to modern history and books on politics, where he analyzed numerous aspects of the history of Europe in the period of the last 100 years, including Poland. His books translated into Polish include The Citizens of Europe, Free Word: 10 Principles for a Connected World. He is also a publicist and the New Guardian, and he writes for the New York Review of Books and other periodicals. The professor, welcome. I would like to give the floor to Magdalena Baran, philosopher, PhD in philosophy, Polish historian of philosophy and ethics. The floor is yours. Good evening, Professor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the unique opportunity to talk with you about freedom and the prospects for freedom in Central Europe. Before we do have a conversation, we would be very pleased to hear your lecture. The floor is yours. The fight for freedom comes from the father to son. It is going to end up with victory. This is the Byron's poem translated by Adam Mickiewicz. We don't really know who wrote it exactly. In August 80 on a piece of paper, and it was pinned to the cross in the Gdańsk shipyard. To me, it became the leitmotif of my whole work devoted to Central Europe, covering the period of 40 years until modern times. The fight for freedom, the fight carried out by the Solidarity movement ended up in the victory in the 1980s in Poland, in Central Europe. A new model of revolution was invented. It was peaceful and negotiated revolution. Further successes: building democracy, sovereignty, NATO, and the European Union. When I was in Gdańsk, 2005, 25 years after the transformation, I felt that it was successful. I considered it a victory. But we, the liberals, forgot the famous statement by Józef Piłsudski that to win and to rest on your laurels means that you fail. We, the liberals, committed this mistake. We rested on our laurels. We were not cautious enough and we did not perceive the moment when the sense of dissatisfaction, of unfairness, and the wrath was born in our society. That is why, again, we have to fight for freedom in Central Europe. A few comments, brief comments, and then we'll have conversation. The president-elect Joe Biden said he was worried about the situation in Belarus, Hungary, and Poland. Interesting. These are three completely different cases. We should not compare the situation in Belarus to the situation in Poland or Hungary, but we should not compare the situation in Poland with the situation in Hungary. In Poland, we witnessed the fight for freedom. In Poland, we see non-liberal democracy, although this is quite a contradictory statement. You either have liberal democracy or you have no democracy, but non-liberal democracy describes a period of degradation of liberal democracy. However, in Hungary, the situation is much worse. In Hungary, there is no democracy at all. Political scientists say that there is a competitive authoritarianism or hybrid system, but there is no democracy. And this is happening inside the European Union, which is a scandal. So the Hungarian case is really serious. If Jarosław Kaczyński would like to follow the Hungarian path, which would mean urbanization of Poland, I'm sure he would fail. Big cities, independent media, local governments, civic society, everything that we can see in the streets of Poland. What is of tantamount importance for the future of democracy in Poland and freedom in Poland? I would say that first and foremost, these are the media, free media. Still, they do exist in Poland, but they don't in Hungary. This is what determines that the election is going to be fair and it will be possible to win the election. If we still do have TVN 24, Ona.pl, Agora, Okopress and other free media, there is still a chance to win the election. If they cease to exist, the odds are low. And the last point I want to make, and then we'll have the discussion. There is still democracy in Poland. It is imperfect, but still existing. We cannot say that the last election was not free election. In democracy, as we saw on the example of the United States, it is important how you win the election. I do admire and I do support all demonstrations, NGOs, social movements, all social initiatives. However, the key to defend democracy and to defend freedom in Poland and in Central Europe is to win the freedom. You need to have strategic solidarity and strategic political opposition. Well, I'm quite afraid to say it, but I think that nowadays the political opposition is more impressive in Budapest than in Warsaw. But there are still good prospects for winning the election, and it means that the fight for the freedom will be successful. And I hope we are going to start our discussion now.
What you have said, Professor, when you were giving your speech, I remember that when Marcin Król said one day, we were stupid, he was talking in the context of resting on the laurels. So when democracy has won in the 1989, after some years, Marcin Król said, we were stupid. On the other hand, my teacher, Professor Józef Tischner, also was talking about it. He was saying that we didn't cope very well with this freedom, and he was calling it a misfortunate gift. So this freedom must have been given into someone's hands. People didn't want the freedom. People didn't know what to do with it. They wanted it, but they couldn't cope with it. So I'm wondering whether nowadays, are we nowadays ready for this new freedom? Polish people, when we look at this Berlin difference, they prefer this negative freedom moment. So we want to be free when we under some pressures, when we face some threats. This is when we raise our heads. So, Professor, how do you perceive freedom in Poland? It's a simple question, as Zbigniew Herbert wrote. 3 comments. My friend Marcin Król, well, I disagree with him, because Marcin Król wrote that we were stupid. He wrote it in the 1990s. I disagree. No, actually, he wrote it in 2015. Yeah, he wrote it, but this is when he was writing about this initial period of the reform. So I disagree with this statement. I think that the mistake happened later on, in the years starting in 2000, when Tusk was leading the government. That government thought that it was huge success. They didn't notice that something was missing, not only in the economy, but also in the social policy. Ludwig Doron was talking about this redistribution of respect. This is a subjective dimension. Secondly, my friend also wrote about some shortages in the triumph of liberalism. He was writing about the aspects that led to the nationalism and to the socialism. So on the one hand, he was talking about community and identity, and on the other hand, on the left-hand side, he looked at the equality and solidarity. And in my opinion, this is of utmost importance. This is what was lacking in the liberalism, not only in Poland, but in other parts of the world. So we have to have a better feeling of community, identity. We need the liberal patriotism, and we need more solidarity. This is Józef Tischner was writing about it. These aspects were very present in this first solidarity movement. Well, of course, you are very right. The Polish tradition is the tradition of fight for freedom, for independence. It's not the fight for rebuilding a good and stable state. And I think that that once the election is won, there will be this organic work. You are talking about the redistribution of respect, and this is something which has been used very strongly by the Law and Justice Party. When you are talking about respect, you used the word the B or the Poland. Regaining dignity by the people who used to feel neglected by the previous system, by the liberals. They felt forgotten and neglected. So now they want to hear this narration of the ruling party. where the nation becomes an element of the politicians' jargon. So this term of the nation, it should unify us under the patriotism, but as a matter of fact, it's excluding. So yes, we want Poland, but what kind of Poland? This is probably the oldest question in the Polish history. No, not only Polish history, also French history. They also keep thinking what the nation means. But just to make it clear, in my opinion, using such terms as Poland B, a basket of deplorables, as Hillary Clinton says, whether this is a problem in itself, this category B is a problem in itself. But let's get back to the notion of the nation. I think that we should behave like Emmanuel Macron. We shouldn't contradict, we shouldn't oppose Europe. Liberals are for Europe and the right wing are the fatherland, are the nation. We shouldn't have these oppositions. Europe and fatherland. But what kind of fatherland? Liberal patriotism, civil patriotism, not the national patriotism. In my opinion, this is an elementary element of this renaissance of liberalism we all need. Well, I am going to be controversial. I would like to talk about the system that is in Poland. You use the term of liberal democracy, and Adam Bodnar said recently that, said in the Senate that we've got a hybrid system. Professor Sadurski often talks about pragmatic authoritarian system. I like this notion. This government learned how to manipulate people. This is nothing new. Tocqueville knew about it when he was teaching us that democracy ends when the ruling party will be able to convince the nation that they will be able to buy them for their own money, with their own money. So this is a huge problem in Poland now, when we have this distribution, this social distribution quite high. Many people believed. Sometimes I listen to my students who tell me that it's the government that gives people money. And, well, we also hear that with the money, our freedom goes. So, on the one hand, this freedom is ours. If we are convinced that the freedom is ours, we will find a way out. I would like to add that the funding, the money, partly is also in the pocket of the European Union. This is an important element in this system, in the Central Europe in particular. There are subsidies, there are grants available from the European Union. I think that we have to distinguish authoritarian personality. This is a way of thinking, a way of running politics. There's no problem for me to say that Kaczynski or Orban have authoritarian personalities. They've got authoritarian style. But if we consider the system, political system, we can see that there are major differences between what has happened in Hungary. I would like to remind you that the constitution has been amended 8 times in Hungary. There is going to be the 9th amendment to the Hungarian constitution soon. So in practice, there is no media pluralism. I think that in Poland, we can say that there is an authoritarian style of politics by the Law and Justice Party. The system itself is in the stage of non-liberal democracy, so there is the period of erosion and degradation of democracy. I think the time has come for us to close our meeting, but I think that we will be able to discuss the aspect of democracy much more. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the meeting, and I would like to give the floor to Olga Brzezińska. Thank you very much for this very inspiring speech by the professor. Thank you for asking all the difficult questions asked by Dr. Magdalena Baran. It was a great food for thought. We will have a lot of thinking to do before we go to sleep. So we will have another break, and after the break at 7:30 we will have a speech by Klementyna Suchańska.